My name is Alex Parker, and that day everything changed. I woke up to find myself in a situation I never expected. My roommate, Liam, had always been just that, someone I shared a space with, a friend. But as I stirred in bed that morning, I noticed something was off. His eyes lingered on me for a moment longer than usual, filled with something I couldn't quite place. There was a softness in his voice when he spoke, one that sent a chill through me. At the time, I didn't realize it, but in those quiet moments, Liam had crossed a line neither of us could ever take back. While I slept, something had shifted, an unspoken boundary had been broken. That moment marked the beginning of a tangled web of desire and risk. It was something I couldn't fully understand at the time, but I also couldn't deny the truth. I was drawn to him. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit subscribe and show your support for LGBTQ+ voices. Sharing these stories helps celebrate our community and ensures stories like this are told and remembered. Thank you for being here. Let's begin. The unexpected encounter. I never thought betrayal could come from someone I trusted so deeply. Alex wasn't just my roommate, he was my anchor when I first stepped into the chaotic world of college. Moving away from home had been daunting, and Alex, with his easy charm and laid-back demeanor, made the adjustment bearable. When we were assigned to share a dorm, I was apprehensive, but Alex shattered those fears within days. Alex had this effortless charisma. Everyone seemed drawn to him. His disarming smile, his unfiltered humor, his way of making you feel like the center of the universe when he spoke to you. I, on the other hand, was quieter, reserved. If I were a shadow, Alex was the sun. We balanced each other in a way that felt natural, almost destined. Our bond deepened quickly. Nights spent binge-watching TV shows turned into heartfelt conversations about our pasts. I told him things I hadn't shared with anyone else. My struggles with self-confidence, the painful breakup with my ex, Liam, who'd left me questioning my worth. Alex listened, his gaze steady, his words always reassuring. For months, I clung to that friendship, believing it was one of the purest relationships I'd ever had. There was comfort in how we cared for each other, how he'd bring me coffee during late-night study sessions, or how I'd cover for him when he missed curfew. Still, there were moments when his gaze lingered just a second too long, or when his jokes carried an edge of something unspoken. I ignored it, convinced that any deeper connection was a figment of my imagination. But then came the night that changed everything. That evening had been emotionally taxing. I'd spent hours rehashing the breakup with Liam in my mind, and Alex had been his usual supportive self, sitting beside me and saying all the right things. "You deserve so much better," he'd said, his voice soft but firm. It was comforting, but also unsettling, as if the words held a weight I couldn't quite name. Exhausted, I went to bed early. Alex stayed up, claiming he had a few assignments to finish. I remember feeling a rare sense of security as I drifted off, the kind that only came from knowing someone had your back. When I woke the next morning, something felt off. Alex was acting differently, avoiding eye contact, his responses clipped and distant. At first, I thought I might be imagining it. We all have bad days, right? But then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something that didn't belong, Liam's jacket, hanging on the back of a chair. My stomach twisted. What was Liam's jacket doing in our dorm? I turned to Alex, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "Did Liam come over last night?" He froze, his expression betraying a flicker of panic before he quickly masked it with indifference. "No, why would he?" It was a lie, I could feel it. And in that moment, a crack formed in the foundation of trust I'd built with Alex. Something had happened while I was sleeping, and I wasn't leaving this alone. I couldn't shake the unease that morning. Alex was always the one to chatter first thing, mocking my bedhead or complaining about his workload, but now, silence wrapped around him like a second skin. He avoided my gaze, focusing on his phone or retreating to the kitchen when I asked casual questions. It wasn't like him. And then there was Liam's jacket, a glaring contradiction to Alex's denial. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe Liam had left it behind weeks ago, and I was reading too much into Alex's behavior. But the uneasiness gnawed at me, refusing to be silenced. It felt as if the walls of the dorm were whispering secrets I wasn't meant to hear. The truth came later that evening. Alex had gone out, claiming he needed to run errands. I stayed behind, still restless and consumed by suspicion. That's when I saw it, Alex's laptop carelessly left open on his desk. Notifications blinked on the screen, one from Liam. Against my better judgment, I clicked. The message thread was damning. Liam, last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about it. Alex, same. I just hope my name doesn't find out. They don't deserve this. My chest tightened, each word a fresh wound. My breath hitched as I scrolled further, uncovering more details. Plans they'd made behind my back, moments they'd shared while I was oblivious. The final blow was the confirmation I dreaded. While I'd been sleeping just a few feet away, the two of them had been together, betraying me in the worst possible way. Alex returned a few hours later, his carefree demeanor painfully at odds with the truth I now held in my hands. I waited, letting him settle in before I spoke. Alex, I began, my voice steady but sharp enough to cut. Why was Liam's jacket here yesterday? His body stiffened, but he quickly recovered, forcing a smile. I told you it must have been here from before. You're overthinking this. I shook my head, the weight of his lies heavy between us. But I know what happened. His face paled, and for a fleeting moment, I saw the Alex I thought I knew, scared, remorseful, vulnerable. Look, it wasn't supposed to happen, he stammered. I didn't mean for it to. You didn't mean for it? My voice cracked, anger rising to the surface. You slept with Liam while I was in the same room, Alex. How do you even begin to justify that? He tried to explain, his words a jumble of excuses, but I couldn't hear them over the sound of my own heartbeat, roaring like thunder in my ears. I didn't wait for him to finish. I grabbed my coat and walked out, leaving him standing in the wreckage of our friendship. Betrayal has a way of breaking not just trust, but the illusion of who you believed someone to be. And now, I had to decide what to do next. The days following Alex's betrayal were suffocating. The dorm, once a space of comfort and laughter, now felt like a prison of memories I couldn't escape. Every corner reminded me of him, of us. I found myself replaying that night over and over, dissecting every moment for clues I might have missed. How could I have been so blind? I kept my distance from Alex, staying out as long as possible or holing up in the library until he fell asleep. When we did cross paths, the tension was unbearable. He'd try to speak, his voice filled with hollow apologies, but I couldn't bear to hear them. His words felt like knives, reopening wounds that hadn't even begun to heal. The betrayal ran deeper than just Alex. Liam's involvement twisted the knife further. He wasn't just an ex, he was someone I'd once loved deeply. We'd shared dreams, plans, and promises, all of which now felt like cruel lies. The thought of them together, conspiring behind my back, left me feeling hollow, as if the person I used to be had been stripped away layer by layer. In the quiet hours, when the world was still and I couldn't distract myself, the weight of it all became unbearable. I questioned everything, my worth, my ability to trust, even my own judgment. Was I too naive? Too forgiving? Did I push them together somehow? These questions circled endlessly, their answers just out of reach. I tried to seek solace in the few friends I trusted, but even that felt futile. Their words of comfort, "You're better off without them," "You deserve more," "Time will heal," felt like platitudes, as though no one could truly understand the depth of what I was feeling. One night, unable to sleep, I grabbed my journal, a habit I hadn't indulged in for years, and began to write. At first, the words came out messy and incoherent, a jumble of anger and sadness. But as I kept going, something shifted. Writing became a release, a way to pour out all the bitterness and heartbreak without judgment. In those pages, I began to untangle the web of emotions I'd been caught in. I realized the betrayal wasn't my fault. It was a reflection of Alex and Liam's choices, their flaws, their selfishness. That realization didn't erase the pain, but it began to loosen its grip on me. Gradually, I started reclaiming pieces of myself. I stopped avoiding the dorm, walking in with my head held high even when Alex was there. I began to spend time on things that brought me joy, painting, reading, and meeting new people who reminded me there was still good in the world. The pain wasn't gone, it lingered like an old scar. But I was learning to live with it, to let it shape me without defining me. And for the first time in weeks, I started to feel a faint flicker of hope. There was still a long road ahead, but at least now, I was ready to take the first step. Weeks passed, and though the sting of betrayal hadn't entirely faded, I'd started to find my footing again. Alex and I rarely spoke anymore, existing as strangers in the same space. The once vivid memories of our friendship now felt distant, like echoes of a life I no longer recognized. One evening, as I was gathering my things to leave for class, Alex finally confronted me. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. I hesitated but nodded. Perhaps I needed this, too. A final confrontation to close the chapter. He began with an apology, his words stumbling over themselves. He admitted to his selfishness, his lack of foresight, and his regret for everything he'd done. "I didn't think about how much it would hurt you," he said, his voice trembling. "And I'll never forgive myself for that." For a moment, I saw the vulnerability in his eyes, the Alex I once trusted. But the damage was done, and no apology could erase what had happened. "I'm glad you're owning up to it," I said, my tone steady but firm. "But forgiveness doesn't mean things can go back to how they were. I deserve better than what you gave me." He nodded, tears brimming in his eyes, and I left the room, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Liam, too, had reached out, not once but several times. His messages ranged from apologies to excuses, but I never responded. What was there to say? His betrayal had cut even deeper than Alex's, and I couldn't give him the satisfaction of hearing me relive that pain. Instead, I blocked his number and deleted every photo, every text. It was as if erasing him from my phone could erase him from my life. With every passing day, I focused on rebuilding myself. I poured my energy into my studies, aced my exams, and reconnected with old hobbies. Painting, which had once been a quiet passion, became a refuge. I'd lose hours in the swirl of colors and textures, each brushstroke a step closer to reclaiming my identity. I also began to open myself up to new people. At a campus art event, I met someone, a quiet, kind soul named Jordan. They didn't demand my trust or push for details about my past. Instead, they simply existed beside me, offering warmth without expectation. It was different, refreshing, and though I was cautious, I allowed myself to feel a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time, possibility. The pain of Alex and Liam's betrayal hadn't disappeared, but it no longer defined me. It had taught me the importance of self-worth, boundaries, and the strength that comes from standing up for yourself. As I walked back to my dorm that evening, I caught a glimpse of Alex through the window. Our eyes met for a fleeting second before I turned away, the weight of our history finally lifting. This was my closure. I was ready to move forward, leaving the past exactly where it belonged, behind me.